Welcome to episode number 13 of the WWIM podcast. That's WWIM podcast. Our guest today is the intelligent, beautiful, talented, generous, inspirational, strong. I can't say, oh, hold on. I just had a technical issue. I can't say enough good things about you, Amy T. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm really excited to have you.
You're amazing. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. That was like the nicest things anybody's ever said. So thank you so much.
I mean, I don't know about you, but like since day one when I met you, you were so nice to me, and you were just awesome and inspirational. And you as a person and your acting. It's just awesome.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
So share with our listeners you grew up in Massachusetts, correct?
I've lived in Massachusetts my entire life, and I've lived in Haverhill my entire life. I never got out of Haverhill. Yeah, and still there. And next week will be 20 years of doing stand-up comedy.
Wow,
which is blowing my mind. Like, how did that happen so quickly?
Right. So what got you there?
It was one of those things like crossing off my bucket list, I think. And I started in improv, and I met a woman named Esther in my improv class. And she was like, Amy, you got to do stand-up. You got to do stand-up. And it's always been something inside of me. Like in high school, I would watch like Rosie O'Donnell's VH1 stand-up spotlight, right? I'm dating myself. Right. And I was just like, I remember watching, and like, something inside me was like excited about that, and I could feel like it was speaking to my soul. But as somebody that was in high school that was nearly 300 pounds, struggling with my sexuality, like, no self-esteem, no self-confidence, and then fast forward about a decade, I'd lost some weight, and I was kind of feeling better about myself, coming into my own skin. And then I met this woman, Esther Yako, and she's like, Amy, you got to try stand-up. You would be amazing at it. And I kind of piqued my interest. And so we took the class together, and it just kind of crossed it off the bucket list. And she gave me the courage and confidence to kind of push me in that direction. And then, so I took a stand-up comedy class at Northern Essex Community College. And my first show was at the Grog on, I think it was May 7th, 2003.
Whoa.
And the day that I took the stage, I got in that first laugh, and I was hooked. I was like, This, it was almost like the heavens opened and was like, this is what you're supposed to be doing.
That's great.
With
That's
your
a great
life.
feeling.
Oh yeah. I was like, there's something inside me. Like, I hadn't gotten in touch with like some spirituality and like those kind of things yet, but like I look back and going, oh yeah, the universe was telling me this is where you're supposed to be going.
Do you remember who taught the class?
I do. Dave Radigan.
Oh, Dave.
Yeah, of course. Nice. Of course. I think I'm like, he taught stand-up for many years. I think I'm like one of his success stories. Like, you know what I mean? That stuck with it, I should say.
Yeah,
not
right.
Like I'm like this end all be all, but like some, people, you get 8, 10, 15 people in a class. And I taught for many years at North Shore Community College, and not too many people stick with it.
Yeah, it's hard. You got to if you really want it, you got to put a lot of effort into it, no matter what you're talking about in life, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And stand up, if you don't have the skin, man, it will eat you alive.
What was that first night like? Do you remember anyone from that night?
I do. Like Ellen Mosquito, I think you're familiar with her. She was in my class, and a handful of other people, but I just remember, I can tell you what I was wearing. The place was packed there. There was like probably 125, 130 people downstairs at the Grob. And it was like magic, like everybody knocked it out of the park. But there's nothing better than that first time on stage. Of course, the audience is full of people that know everybody, right? So you can't have a bad set. But I just know that, matter of fact, I opened the show. Dave had me go first.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Do you remember your first joke or any of the jokes that you said?
I do. Before I got into stand-up comedy, I'd always dreamed to be in the first white female rapper. Feminem. That was the first joke I ever wrote.
Nice.
And went from there. And then I just used a lot of life experiences as we do,
Yeah, right.
talking about, losing 130 pounds,
You're a
on that.
great storyteller.
Thank you. Thank
and
you.
and not and that's long format and the short format. You're great at sharing in a humorous, not only humorous way, but honest way. And you're not fun to make, you're not afraid to make fun of yourself, which I think is really important and stand up.
Yes. Like, right. Leave the innocent bystanders out of it and just kind of go focus on you.
What did family and friends say when you started doing this? Were they
super supportive? And I don't have a huge family,
Yeah.
but super supportive, and I just kept at it, and I went at it hard. And like, being in the local Merrimack Valley area, my family owned a business, so I could pull, customers. Hey, I'm performing, so I'd get customers to come, and so I was able to pull an audience pretty good, which Dave loved, right?
Right, of course.
So I got paid work pretty quickly because I was doing a good job, and I could bring an audience pretty quickly. And yeah, very supportive. And then I would say stand-up was it was both good and bad for me. I think that was also the beginning stages of, I think mental health was, for many years. I just think stand-up and the lifestyle exacerbated it and brought it to a head quite quickly.
Like,
so
as far as like bringing up fears or bringing up feelings that you didn't want to deal with, or
I think I think because I gained success pretty quickly, Boston Globe named me a rising star. I made a movie. I made a documentary. Like, probably within the first 5-6 years of stand up, I was in a documentary. Boston Globe named me a rising star. I met a lot of very well known people in the lesbian community of stand up. Very well known people with that. So I think I got ahead of myself. And then the lifestyle of just being in the nightclubs and bars 4 or 5 nights a week, I just exacerbated a drinking problem that probably was already beginning, but it just
when
encouraged
you're in the right
it just
environment.
I'm at work.
Yeah, right. Well, it was like, that was for me in college. It was just like, you're around that social scene where drinking, and not only just drinking to excess is just part of it. That's just part of it. And if you're not wired for that, if you're in that environment, you're going to be like, awesome. And, I don't know about you, but when you're around a lot of people that are excessively drinking, it's way easier to be like, well, I don't have a problem. Everyone else is doing it. I mean,
that was definitely it. Like, I wasn't the only one, so how is it my problem? Right. Or it was just, it just got out of control, which then it's funny, I have 2 baselines of stand-up. So I started doing stand-up 20 years ago, but I just celebrated 13 years in recovery. So I have that, the first 7 years of stand-up, and then the next 13 of stand-up. So it's like I have two baselines, because the first 7 years is, I go back and look at tapes frequently to just kind of see maybe old material that I can pull back or whatever. And I don't even like that human. I don't even like the person that was doing those jokes.
It's not really you, right?
It wasn't me.
Yeah.
It wasn't me. Yeah.
It was like just a shell of you that was going through, something really deep and dark, but you were still going through life. I mean, you're still.
Yeah, I don't know if it was necessarily the good way, but I married and divorced the same woman twice. So I went through 2 marriages and 2 divorces in that time. And then just went balls to the wall across the country while I was promoting the documentary at different film festivals. So I was having a good time, but not realizing the trail of destruction that I was leaving, and then just ruining relationships, business relationships, personal relationships, professional relationships, just a dumpster fire. And that now has hurt the second half of this Amy T career, right? Because people, they don't have to forgive, and they don't have to forget, and right, they don't. And so you leave first impressions, they last. So
that
you
is
live
true.
with that.
You'd like to think people could realize, well, that was a different Amy or different Dave or whoever back then going through some stuff. But some things we do, people can't really get over, and that's their choice, right?
Absolutely. And I have to, you have to have there's some humbleness to that. But it also fuels that staying in recovery and staying in the person that I've become over the last 13 years, recognizing that I don't want to provide that kind of hurt and pain and chaos again. And so it also, like, for me, it's also like, I want to show them that, yes, I was that person, but it wasn't for nothing. Like, I was going through something. So it makes me just continue to be a better person and stay in my best health, so that, you can just show that that you're not that same person, right.
Can you share that last time you drank, what that was like?
No, it's ugly. I was going through another breakup with somebody that I was very much, my heart was in it, and I was going through a breakup because of my drinking, and my behavior was whatever. And I had done a show in New Jersey the night before. Don't really remember it at all, but I woke up the next morning in a strange New York City apartment, passed out in the fireplace.
Oh.
And I just literally balled up in the fireplace. Granted, New York City apartments are small, so that's probably where they had room to stuff me. But I just woke up, and at that point, I was in my mid-30s. My car had just been repossessed. I was $72,000 in debt.
Oh.
My comedy career was tanking at that point. I wasn't heading in the direction that I was a couple years prior. And I had nothing to show for it, it was just isolation, humiliation, and desperation. And I was financially and emotionally bankrupt, wanted to take my own life, and was just I can't do this anymore. For what? And then recognizing that I probably needed some help, then sought some help with a family therapist friend, and we got to the bottom of things. And that was the last time I started going into therapy a couple of weeks before, because it was getting dark and ugly. And then that last time that I went out to do a show and drank, that this something's got to give.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I never looked back, because it was when I really got honest with it, and really took an honest accountability of it. Right. Every time something bad was happening, alcohol was always involved. Let's see if, my life might not get better, but let me take this out of the equation and see what happens. And if it doesn't get better, then that wasn't the problem.
Right. Exactly. Because I don't know while you were drinking, if you ever did these little mental gymnastics. I would always do this, and it drives me nuts when I hear people do this. Not drives me nuts, but I was just like, oh God, I wish I could just implant my thoughts into your brain right now. The old, oh, if A happened, I'd be happy. If B happened, I'd be happy. If C happened, I'd be happy. Which they're never going to happen, because you're in the middle of poisoning yourself.
Right.
And then, you're just fueling the thing that things are bad, so I'm just going to keep them that way, kind of.
Yeah, I think for me, because we're in stand-up comedy 4 or 5 nights a week, you're around it. It's kind of the lifestyle. So it's this can't be the problem. This is what we're all doing. And just not even recognizing that was not helping the situation. And then after, then recognizing there was a mental health condition
on top
in
of
there.
Yeah.
And, now it's in there, and never mind, the alcohol is just escalating all of that. So, I do remember days, I can look back and be like, oh, I had 2 drinks and I was fine. Right. And then maybe the week later, those same 2 drinks blacked me out, and I have absolutely no recollection, just because the chemistry wasn't right that week, but not knowing that mental health had anything to do with it. And then when I finally, started doing some work on the inside, I was like, oh, Jesus, there's a lot here. There's a lot of layers in here.
Alcohol will do that. Alcohol will make sure you can't work on those issues. Right? Yeah. Alcohol will just increase those issues and turn the volume up, and kind of make you realize they're there.
Yeah.
How long after you stopped drinking were you like, I made the right choice? It's tough. It's a hard decision
Yeah.
because I
Um,
remember like people telling me you need to stop, and I, in my mind, could not picture myself never drinking again. I had moments where like no way, I like this stuff too much.
I don't know, like when it, like I knew it was better.
Hmm.
Some of it was like out of spite too, because so many
Right.
people were like, "You're not going to do this." Yeah, yeah, I will. And so like some of it was like spite. Some of it was like trying to get the girlfriend that was breaking up with me back. And
Yeah.
knowing that, all right, if I can show that I'm going to be sober, she'll come back, and that will make things better. But then it just was one day after another that like, yeah, it got, you know, you got down and dirty in working through the stuff while it was happening, but not drinking certainly wasn't making anything any worse. So okay, just keep going. But some of it was, a lot of it was like just some spite.
Yeah.
And you tell me I can't. I remember friends, they sent me, it was New Year's Eve, the first year I was getting sober. It was New Year's Eve, and they were like, Amy, you're not going to do this. Can you run to the, like they just like, you're not going to stick with this. And I was like, I'm doing pretty good. Like at this point, I was probably like 8 or 9 months sober, and like, I'm trying. They're like, will you run to the liquor store and get the champagne for New Year's? I was like, I could do that. But, like, yeah, I can, because I don't mind being around it. And then,
Right.
yeah, then it just turned into now, like, this is how I live.
Yeah.
Like, now I can't even think about
The other
going
one,
back.
the other person,
Yeah,
right?
I can't.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, and that I think would happen. I would say I recognize, and then I got real spiritual. Like I started like getting spiritual into Buddhism, and like, and then working in therapy and all that stuff. And then I just started recognizing the gifts that were continuously being given to me. And a couple months after um, I got sober, I was at Boston Pride with a friend of mine, and that is where I met my wife. We didn't like, we met each other, but nothing really happened until a few weeks later. But like, there was that instant of like, I saw this other person ordering water at the bar, and that's like a weird thing at Pride. Like, who gets water at the bar? And I remember that distinctly, making eye contact with them. Fast forward to, here we've been together for 13 years.
Wow. Congrats.
Yeah. So, but I remember like the universe gave me this gift, and I knew when I met her and the universe gave it to me, that there's something special about her, and I didn't want to mess this up. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that it was going to be forever, and I didn't know we were going to be in love. But I knew that this relationship, friendship, or whatever, this other human was special, and I didn't want to taint it with any kind of. So it just, and her support system, right? Like all of that.
She's a nurse, right?
She's a psych nurse, yes, psych nurse practitioner now, Dave. She just graduated, and she's now an MP. So she's pretty badass. Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
So that must have been, so not only were you transforming yourself personally, but professionally as a stand-up, that must have transformed your act big time, right? I mean, you weren't talking about your drinking problems while you were going through them on stage.
No, but like I had to do some writing now, because those jokes now just don't fit inside here.
That's not you.
Yeah, like they didn't feel good to talk about anymore. They just weren't relevant. And also, it took me a while to get back on stage comfortably.
Yeah.
Because not so much it wasn't about being around the alcohol. It was now people are talking to me, and I had a social anxiety problem that I didn't know existed, because I was always self-medicating. So like, I'm the life of the party, and now I'm not. Now I'm like, my skin is crawling. You're coming, like, too much was happening too fast. People are talking to me. I'm like anxious. I'm like, at the edge of autism, in a show. I'm like, I got to get out of here. Like, so it took me a while to like get comfortable to perform again, also to start writing again. And then what do you do as a comic? You write about what you know.
Yeah.
All right, let's come out with the mental health and substance use. Like, I'm not afraid to talk about it. Like, yep, I did these things, and I'll make it funny, because it also was healing for me.
Yes.
And
you're so genuine with your delivery, Amy. Like, that's like, when I see you on stage, I'm like, that's just you. That's just you. You're not putting on an act.
No.
You know what I mean? Yeah, it's just you being you, and it's awesome.
Yeah. You come over my house, it's the same person.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So do you remember the first time you shared some of those recovery stories on stage, what that was like, and the reception?
I remember saying it out loud the very first week, because then following, this was a Friday night, was my last drink. And then the following Friday, I used to host a show every month down in Salisbury at the Hobo Cafe. And that following, so that was guaranteed, I had to go do it. And I remember saying it out loud. I'm like, so I haven't had a drink in a week, and just, I think, holding myself accountable without realizing that's what I was doing, but just kind of talking about it and putting it out there. And I remember having another comic on stage, and they were like a decade in. Wow. And that wasn't something that they really talked about, but they came over and they were like, Aim, you could do this. It's going to be the best thing that ever happened to you. And I'm like, okay. So that to me was a whisper, I'm heading in the right direction. Yeah. And then starting to talk about it. And then right after, fast forward a year later, I started getting involved in the National Alliance of Mental Illness, because once I recognized I was diagnosed with a mental health condition, I'm like, what does this even mean? How's that? What does this mean? I don't even know. So I started Googling, and now I'm dating a psych nurse, right? So I'm Googling, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, holy, if I've been living my life like this for 35 years and not realizing something was wrong, how many people out there are like that, not knowing? And so I got involved with the National Alliance of Mental Illness. I started speaking for them, because now I have a platform background of stand-up comedy. Yeah. And I know how to make this horrible thing, I can make this funny, and I can make it relatable, and I can make it a little bit more palatable for people to hear and understand and learn from. Connect with. Yep. Yeah, it's like a backhanded way of education. And then I started doing that with my stand-up. So they naturally progressed to writing literally about what's happening to me, but kind of giving that backhanded way of educating people and trying to reduce some stigma. Some cheap applause breaks, right? 13 years sober, and you get a big applause. Don't reward me for what I'm supposed to do, but I'll take it.
Well, that's the thing. What I love about our generation is we were not really that we were taught, but when we were younger, people were crazy. People were, you didn't really talk about it. But the more you talk about something, the less power it has, right? I've always said it's so true. And now these things have names. It's not just crazy. They have names. Right. The kids, the special ed kindergarten students that I work with, back in the 50s and 60s, they would have just been put off to some institution. Yes. For the rest of their lives, probably. But now they have, a diagnosable, they're on the spectrum somewhere, or whatever issue it is they're dealing with. It has a name, and we know strategies to deal with it. Right. Similar to what you're like, oh wow, this thing has a name, and now I'm gonna deal with it.
Yeah, I wanted to know everything about it. How do I cure it? How did I get it? How did this happen? And so I really kind of got into it, and it's oh, this is actually going back to probably I can go back to some trauma, right? Yeah. In single digit age, and then just like you said, our generation didn't talk about it, and you didn't.
You're supposed to be tough, have a name. Tough, be quiet, shut up, and deal with it, and you'll get over it. Suck it up.
Yeah, in your own skin, right? Or and whatever. So
and that's nothing against our parents' generation. They did their best with what they knew.
They did the best they could. You're right, Dave. Yeah, I've done a lot of healing with that, Dave. They did the best they could. But I think about it now, and that's one of the messages that I say a lot. That and I think this. But I work with individuals with dual diagnosis in a recovery program, and when they're nervous, right? They don't want to talk about it. They're ashamed of it, and I was like, stop giving it power. If you're afraid of it, then other people are going to be afraid of it. If you just act and live your life, right, the best you can, and recognize that you can go to the grocery store and nobody's going to care. But the more you give that fear power, the more that's going to perpetuate. And so I walk out, I don't have any problem talking about what I am and who I am and what I have, because I'm not ashamed of it.
Right. And if people see you ashamed or acting oh, this is who I am, kind of this, and I can't be quote normal out, and then they're going to feed off of that with you. But if you're walking around I'm a person, I also have this little thing, but we'll deal with it, it'll be okay, then they'll have the similar attitude.
Not 1 in 4, right? 1 in 4. Yeah. I always say that 1 in 4 people are diagnosed with mental illness, and but I feel it's 1 in 4 people don't realize they have it. They
Yeah.
just haven't been diagnosed yet. Like it's a small statistic. I think most people just don't know they just haven't been diagnosed yet.
I've also said there's probably a high percentage of people that are against therapy. Those are the ones that probably should be in therapy.
There you go.
But that's the other stigma too, is like if you need help or if you have mental illness, you're weak. And that's just got to change.
Right.
Like illness is illness, no matter if it's a physical, mental, like your brain is your part of your body too. And that can also be sick.
Yeah. And I think we're doing a good job though. Like you're right. Like it's starting to get better. It's still there because I'm still working with it. But it's still there, but you're right. Like it's okay. Just because I don't have a cast on my arm doesn't mean I don't need help.
And it's hard to ask for help too. Not easy to admit, oh, I can't do this myself. I need someone else to help me along here.
It's funny. This is my new thing. Like at the end of 2022, I was trying to work on being more vulnerable. So I'll share with you, like, so because I have the diagnosis and because I work in recovery and I'm trying to be the model person, right? Like I never felt like I could not be okay.
Yeah.
Right. Like if I'm not okay, how am I
gonna?
Right. And so I think like, I put on a shield of like, I'm fine. Yeah. I'm fine. And then I actually wasn't.
Yeah.
And I was like,
the other thing, Amy, that it's hard for me to remember too is like, you can be in recovery and still take a really, take one of those nosedives. Like we all have bad days. Right.
And I wasn't willing to admit it, and nor was I willing to reach out and ask for help. Yeah. Because I just felt like, how am I supposed to like take a mental health day or a break when I'm the one? Because I felt like I'm the one that's supposed to have this shit together. Or stuff together.
Are you like me? Do you have like a set of like mental Jedi tricks, like when kind of your mind gets into that negative space that you have to like remind yourself?
I mean, for me, it's like I can't do everything, and like not absorbing everybody else's stuff. So if you're working,
so you're empath to the 12th degree. Like,
I just had like at one point over the last couple of years, I had like 22, 24 people that I was supporting, and that's just. And so I was.
And that was too much somehow.
I was working 2 full-time jobs, trying to juggle comedy. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Like. I was stretched too thin, and and that's it. I was burning the candles at both ends, and it was starting to go out, and just trying to be like, no, I can do everything. I got it. This person needs help, and I'm like, yeah, actually, I'm not going to be any good if I don't take a beat.
Right. That's when you spread yourself too thin, you got to realize you're not actually helping anyone, or you're.
I wasn't helping myself. That's what I'm sure. Yeah.
What was the speaking of the pandemic? What was that for you as far as the stand up? Because stand up just kind of halted.
Yeah, for me, I didn't like believe it for a minute, right? And then like they're doing Zoom shows, and I'm like, I'm not doing Zoom shows. And then I was like, a few more months go into it, and I'm like, oh, this is the way we're going. So you need to wrap your head around this. I'm fortunate that I live on the border of New Hampshire, and I don't know if you know this, COVID didn't happen up there.
Oh, so they're still doing shows.
They were still doing shows. We got creative though, right? Like we were doing, parking lot. We put tents out in parking lots, be out in golf courses and stuff. So I was able to work fairly steady and do some Zoom stuff.
Yeah.
But then at that point is when the recovery community was at a loss, because now they can't go anywhere. So now I was like, right. So I was like enmeshed in that as well. But I feel like I was able to. It's funny. I had like a real struggle because my wife worked in the hospitals during COVID, and here I am going out into the world doing comedy. Like, should I be bringing people out to do shows? But like, so we would have back and forth conversations about that, but like, I need that. I need that for in here.
Right.
Because this doesn't work if this, if the tank isn't full. Yeah. So I was very fortunate to stay working enough to just, once, twice a month, 3 times a month or something, just to keep this full.
Keep it going. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like things are kind of back to normal now as far as shows and going out places, which is nice.
I would say in the last year, yeah, maybe like November-ish, I noticed a shift.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, the places were full, like New Year's Eve was packed. I'm like, okay, I feel like people are just going to adjust to what's going on. And yeah, the shows that I've been at have been pretty successful over the last few months. So it feels like we're getting back, feels like people want to be out laughing.
And most of the teachers I work with we're just like, we don't care. We don't care. We're going to teaching unmasked. We need to be unmasked in front of these kids. We're just going to do it. If you get sick, you get sick. At least that's my attitude. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we're like living with it now. Yeah, I know. I remember trying people like wanting to do shows and they're like, oh, you need to wear a mask at the show. And then I would just be like, that's not going to work for me because you need to see.
You need to see the comic's face.
Yes. Yeah. Like, so I'm not going to be masked on stage. So thank you. But like, we'll get there. And I can appreciate, I also found it hard to perform to people that were masked.
Right.
Because like, they might be laughing, but
I'm
not getting any.
Yeah.
So there was like, I don't know, it thickened your skin in a different way.
Yeah, it's the same in school. Like it's night and day. Masked and unmasked is night and day when you're doing a comedy show or you're dealing with 6-year-olds. You need that face to face.
Yes. And I found that like even with the recovery, like working with my individuals supporting, when we were masked, like we were just missing like, even if you were trying to like joke with them, you were missing like stuff. And a lot was just getting lost in translation. That's how I decided I needed hearing aids too. Like I got hearing aids during the pandemic because while we're masked, I couldn't hear you. I couldn't read your lips anymore. I was like, oh shoot.
And it's been 3 years now. That's the other crazy thing.
Yeah, it's definitely different.
That's the other crazy. So you are an inspirational recovery and mental health advocate and stand-up comic. How many, like you don't just do stand-up though, you do the corporate gigs, you do pretty much you do fundraising shows, you do pretty much. That's the other great thing about your brand of comedy, Amy, is you can take your hilarious story, inspirational hilarious story, and you put it in different, like you've done schools too, right? You do pretty much everything. Yeah,
I'll go anywhere hospitals, schools. Next month I'm doing a show, like mental health month is busy for me, right? So I get to do a lot of like stuff, like whether it's for NAMI or I'm going to Hingham High School to talk to the kids about mental health. I'm doing a corporate gig for a pharmaceutical company for mental health. And so like, there's a lot of opportunity to raise the awareness. And then like, even when I'm doing straight stand-up shows, somebody hears some of those jokes and they're like, oh, hey, this might work. So it's been nice to be able to do both.
What would you say are you, when you said during the pandemic you had like 20 something people coming to you for support, which totally makes sense, right? People who have been through a lot and are very kind and smart, people are going to seek them out when they're dealing with issues. So it actually makes a lot of sense that a lot of people came to you. What are your like usual, do you have like bits of advice that you constantly, like I find myself like constantly saying the same stuff to people when they come to me with issues? Are you?
It's funny because when the pandemic hit, right? And people like didn't know what to do. What do you mean I can't leave my house? And like, this is horrible. This is the worst thing that ever happened to me. I was like, oh, I've done this already.
Right.
I've already been through this. So this is nothing. This little pandemic thing, I can get through this. So I feel like the actual pandemic itself and the obstacles that was for us as a society didn't affect me because I was like,
because you've been through way worse.
Way worse. So being able to reframe it. Yeah. So like for me, it's I feel like I know like I feel like the individuals I work with like think I'm corny because it's constantly like you got to turn it around, like reframe it, you got to make lemonade. Like this isn't happening just to you, like stop, you're not the
there are cliches that are cliches for a reason because they're true, right?
Yeah. And I feel like they just want like a magic pill, like this is just gonna fix it. And it's like, no, you got to put some work into it. You got to make some changes other places. And like, you just stay steady with that same message of like, I'm telling you. So I go, you may not want to be sober, but this isn't helping. So how about we try it for a couple of months and see what it looks like. And if it doesn't look any better, I'm not saying you have to give it up forever, but let's try to give it like 3 months. Let's try to get your meds to work in without being interfered with. Like, let's, like off the top of my head, of course you get like canned responses immediately, right? Like, here we go.
I've connected with a lot of people with Crohn's disease online, and a lot of them want just, doctor, give me that pill and make it all go away. But you got to watch your diet. You got to maybe try one more, more than one kind of medication. You have to exercise. You have to keep mentally healthy as well, or that Crohn's disease is going to rear its ugly head, just like drinking. But like you said, you got to put the work in. I mean, dealing with chronic anything is not easy. And chronic also means you have to deal with it every day. And I've also say this to people, it's in the name. Dis-ease means not easy. So no, it's right there. It's not going to be easy no matter what you're dealing with.
But I feel like, sometimes I feel like people they don't want to do any of the work. They don't want to make one change. It's like, because I feel the same thing with mental health, right? Your diet, your movement, like all of those things I'm not saying it's going to fix it, but it's not going to hurt it, so I get a lot of eye rolls. I'm like, all right. Like, because it's a whole thing, right? Like if you're eating like junk and crap, it's, your body's going to feel it.
It's going to manifest.
You're not moving, you're not getting anything.
And it's not manifesting just in your body. It's just going to manifest kind of around you, right?
Right.
And, that also goes, the people that you surround yourself with. That's so important.
Huge. That is huge. Like, that was a good inventory I took of, was the people that, and it took me a long time to recognize some of the ones that had been in my life for so many years, that were not helpful, but they were what I knew.
Right.
So like you grieve those friendships, family, whatever it is. And like, so I'm very protective of my energy. So like, be responsible for the energy you bring into the world is like my personal motto. So like, I want to make sure that I'm always projecting a good energy, because I never want to make somebody else have a bad day because I'm in a bad mood. So like, you make my coffee wrong, I'm just going to buy another coffee. Like I don't think you did it on purpose. So like, we're just going to stop at the next Dunkin's, not a big deal.
Right.
But also like, people who I surround myself with, I want to make sure that you're filling up my tank and you're not draining my battery. So that was a hard thing to learn. And like we work, stand-up comedy is a tough one in that realm, because not everybody's like us, Dave. So you got to be,
there's some people that are mean.
You just got to be mindful of who you want to spend your time with. 3 hours at a show is a long time. So who's going to drain your battery, or who's going to charge it?
That's great. One thing I also find myself telling people, I don't know if you've heard this one. If you're going through a hard time or something's bothering you, you ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? And if the answer is no, then why are you even spending a second worrying about it? Like,
I go shorter chunks. Like, seriously, how big is this going to be tomorrow? Like, it's probably massive today. I get it, right? Like, your phone broke. I understand that. But we can actually probably get it fixed in the next 24 hours. Like, it's not the end of the world. So let's take it back a minute.
And remember those 20 years we functioned without phones. Like,
no, our individuals, right? They don't understand it.
They don't. That's the other thing with technology and just the way society is, that instant gratification is so different now than it was when we were kids, right?
For sure. So I think that's why the pandemic hit certain people harder, because that's all they know, right? Or made it worse for them because they're like on social media too much. Like, that was even just something that I did, like, for my own self, was cleaning up the junk that was coming through my feed. Like, this isn't, I don't I don't actually even like you. Why am I following you? Like, you are
I
not
actually
somebody
had
I would choose to spend time with.
the summer of 2020 was one of my most productive summers, like for
Amazing.
me. Well, self-discipline is probably the hardest skill to, I mean, and you can be really self-disciplined and then just have a bad day or bad weeks, right?
Mhm.
But I gave myself a schedule for that whole summer. I said, all right, you're going to wake up and you're going to have a coffee. Then between 9 and 10, you read a book. Between 10 and 11, you do Spanish lessons on Duolingo. Then you have lunch. Then you
Amazing.
exercise. Then then you write a screenplay. Then you have dinner. Then you write another screenplay. And I couldn't. So the end of my night, which was like 7 or 8, was time to watch a movie, play video games, do fun stuff. But I could not do that fun stuff unless exercise, Spanish, screenwriting, and reading were all done.
That's amazing.
Right.
That's
And I did
amazing.
it
Like
that whole
structure
time.
and routine is big for me.
I wrote 2 scripts that summer.
That's fantastic, Dave. That's all. Like, I try to tell that to my individuals that I support. Like, you need to have some structure and routine. They're like, I'm not getting anything done. I'm like, you have all this time. You're just wasting it.
Yeah.
Like, so let's chunk it into, all right, from 9 to 12, you can do this. From 12 to 3, you do this. Like, but
easy on paper, but and that's the other thing. Like I'm sure you know this. Momentum is so big. Like not drink. Like you actually mentioned May 7th as one of your dates. May 7th is my no drinking day. So
nice.
Like, May 7th, 1995, like those first couple of days not drinking, like were that hard. And that summer and going into my senior year of college and not drinking. But now that this momentum is 20 plus years now, it's like it's a train that won't be stopped. I mean, and it's the same with self-discipline. Like you do a little bit each day, then it
create the habit.
And then it's just that's who you are. Then it just becomes you, right?
Yes.
You,
yep.
I'm Dave, the writer. I write every day. So I do that. Like I'll go to bed and I'll be like, well, you can't call yourself a writer today because you didn't write.
That's amazing. It is. It's
I like going to bed calling myself a writer.
That's awesome. It's funny. Candace she's always been
Candace T, your wife.
Yes, this is my wife. She's always celebrated my sobriety like huge. So the very first year she got me a present. She made a book of all my friends wrote something nice about my first year of sobriety. And then the following year it was 2 presents. And then the following year it was 3 presents, whatever. So then it's become a game, right?
Yeah.
So now it's like 13. So this year it was 13, 13 years. And so it's been that many presents. And they're not like, it's not like, some of them are fun. Some of them are pretty extreme. So she was like, she said to me this year, she's like, we got to stop this. This is ridiculous. You know what I mean? It's too many. And I was like, no, you started this. And I stay sober for the
only way to stop it is for you to drink. And that's not.
She's like, honestly, when I started it, I didn't think we were either going to still be together or you would have lasted this long. I was like, oh, yeah.
Wow.
So just for fun, but I got Snoop Dogg tickets for this year, right?
Where is he?
He's going to be at, I'm going to date myself again, but the old Great Woods. Which one is that? Tweeter, Staple, Xfinity. Yeah.
Great Woods.
Yeah.
It's Great Woods.
Yeah, exactly. So I got Snoop Dogg tickets.
That'll be amazing.
I know, because nothing says like recovery with Snoop Dogg. But now at this point, like, yeah, it's who I am now. I don't drink. I don't even think about.
No.
I'm not powerless over it. I don't even think about it. Now it's just a fun game that we've done for years. But I'm not a drinker.
Yeah, and right. You don't do that. So recovery for you, do you ever go to meetings?
I take in my individuals to meetings. I did not start out in the rooms. Yeah. I went to one AA meeting the first week I was sober, and I was like, forget this.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's not for everyone, right?
Yeah.
And if it works for you, go ahead. That's why.
Yeah, it does work for some people. At that point, for me, it didn't speak to me. Yeah. And so it wasn't until many years later when I started doing recovery coaching and peer work that I could see the benefit of it after. I'm like, because I was looking at it from a different lens. I was already sober for 6-7 years. So I'm like, oh, I see why this is helpful. It's the community. It's your support network. It's the people that you're going to meet. It's the like-minded people that are going to support you to stay sober. So now what I do, I teach a Dharma recovery. I teach a Buddhist-based approach to recovery, and that for me, I feel like is beneficial for not only substances, but mental health as well. So, but I will support individuals that want to go to meetings. I'm happy to be there.
So the the AA has the 12 steps. Does the Buddhism approach have similar, not similar steps, but are there steps? Are there like, what are the pillars of?
So they have what is called the Eightfold Path, and they do inquiries. So you're living with wise mind, wise understanding, wise speech, wise intention. So it's mostly like your intention into the world, like you're not speaking to harm. So your speech, your intention, you're not stealing. You're not gonna. How does your behavior affect the world, and that comes back at you? So being
so
very
you can't drink because your behavior is gonna.
Yeah, well, like let's take a look at let's do the inquiries. How has this harmed you and other people? Like what? So it is kind of like it's like doing step work, but it's called inquiries, and a little bit more not focused on your drinking, but also your behavior and how.
Where's it coming from, and what does it do?
Exactly.
And what are you going to do about it, basically?
Right.
And that works for you, and you find a lot of people it's helping.
Yeah, because with Buddhism, you're the power. There's not a higher power you're giving it over to. Like there's not. So you're the one that's in control.
Which I personally, that's what I like about if AA works for you and you need to say I need a higher power to help me, great. But like to me, I want the power. Like it should be in my control. Like that's how I see it too.
Yeah. So Dharma and Buddhism puts the control into your hands. And
I guess it's just different.
I can do another podcast.
Different styles. Everyone has different styles, and recovery is different for everyone, right? And that's a powerful statement.
And it's not linear, and it looks different for other people. Like I work for an organization that does harm reduction. So if abstinence isn't, I'm abstinent, that's what works for me, I'm good with that. But if abstinence isn't your goal, then let's figure out how it doesn't, ruin your life. Maybe you can go have one glass of wine. Maybe, marijuana has a lot of medicinal purposes, but if it's controlling your life, then we got to look at it.
That's how I always measure it. Like if what you're doing is affecting your relationships, your job, if your life is in disarray because of what you're doing, then you probably should not do that. But if you can have a job, have loving relationships, function, not get arrested, then
yes.
Did you watch the Netflix documentary about different approaches to therapy with like MDMA for PTSD and stuff like that?
Yes, my program is we're working with ketamine now.
Okay, yeah, I've heard.
Yeah, so coming from an abstinence-based approach of like, whoa,
right?
I had to wrap my head around like harm reduction.
Yeah.
What do you mean? And then like now I'm like, okay, and at the end of the day, again, if you're not screwing up your life, I don't care.
Or if you're doing better off than you were, right?
Yeah, if you're happier and healthier,
if you're going up the hill instead of down the hill, then then what you're doing is kind of good.
Right. If you're a better member of society, that works for me. And you're happier and you're healthier. Actually, at the end of the day, I don't care. I don't care what you call it. Like, that's why, like, if I do go to a meeting, it's like, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not an alcoholic anymore. I was.
Right.
I'm in recovery. Because I'm in recovery for my mental health. I'm in recovery for everything.
We're all in recovery for being alive, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
And we just every life is a spectrum of many different things, and we're all on a spectrum of many different things on.
And I'll be honest, like I've had to that's work up on me, like to change my worldview.
Yeah.
As well, so yeah, at the end of the day, I don't care. I actually don't care. Like, I just want you to be happy. I want you to be healthy. I want you to live the best life that works for you without harming other people in the meantime. So whatever that looks like.
Whatever that looks like for you, if you're not harming people, have at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But and I think again, there's a lot of like mentality that like, no, you got to, people just have in their mind, no, it's got to be this way. It's got to be, people are very narrow in what some people, right? And like you said, it's getting better. Some people are very narrow. No, you you can't do this, you can't do that. You can't, you know, you have to go to AA. Like you can't, things like that. But
Yeah,
like you said, I think people have more open minds and realize it's not a cookie cutter situation.
right. And I think that's like, I feel like TikTok has helped that, because it was very narrow minded. Like if you're gonna be sober, you only can do it one way. And I have, friends that are like, it's the only way you gotta do it, Amy. 90 meetings, 90 days. You gotta get in the rooms, you gotta give yourself over to God. And I'm like, no, I just don't have to go to the liquor store. Like that's
Right, yeah.
how, like, so you have some like narrow minded, but I feel like TikTok has actually opened up, like I follow recovery TikTok, right?
Oh, okay.
And so, opened up a lot more dialogue, that it is not linear, that the rooms are not the end all be all getting sober. And so I feel like that's helped. And then people trying out, dry January, sober curious October, whatever the hell it is. But whatever, but like, hey, if you can commit to 30 days and see if you can see a change, okay.
Right.
And maybe you will recognize that maybe, 5 nights a week isn't working, but two would be okay. Then that's harm reduction.
Right.
So
I like that model. Like just better off than you were before is the basic.
yes.
And then you'll get to the place where you should be eventually if you keep going on that. I mean, and that's the very, the hardest step usually is the first one too. And it sounds like the philosophy of that is like, hey, if we can get you going in that way, even if it's just a tiny, like you said,
I love
harm reduction.
And what you can't describe too is how uncomfortable it is, because you're crawling in your skin, because now you're just left with your own head and you're like, what the? So you got to get something to get yourself busy. You got to get a hobby. You got to like, you've got to go out and get something done, so that I can appreciate like why the meetings will give you something to do. I just don't have to appreciate what they're telling you.
Well, Aim, our hour is just about up, so I think.
Oh my goodness, that did fly by.
I know that, right?
We're gonna have to do a part two.
I knew we'd have a lot to talk about.
For sure.
Any last thoughts, or I think you mentioned your shows before coming up.
Yeah, you know what? You can find me on experimentalcomedy.com.
Yes.
All the social media at Amy T or ECT at Amy T. And yeah, Dave, it's so great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on, Amy. You're awesome. I love you.